SLT Fibre and experience the power of fibre technology. Sri Lanka's only super fast internet connection. SLT Fibre. Call 1212 now.
Tonight, no fear. Speaker insists UN is not here to interfere.
The idea of the UN interference and unfair treatment is terribly misleading.
Ours is better than yours. The Prime Minister digs his heels in over Sri Lanka's newest international airport.
Jaffna International, there's a demand by people to use that airport. The problem of MATTALA is that there's no demand for MATTALA.
Presidential battle. JVP hurls accusations of bribery and corruption at the New Democratic Front presidential hopeful. From one war zone to another. US forces exiting Syria, enter Iraq. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Monday, the 21st of October, 2019.
Fair and Lovely men ගෑවට පස්සේ මාක්ස් අඩු වෙලා ෆෙයානස් වැඩි වෙලා.
මාක්ස් අඩු කරලා ඔයාගේ ෆෙයානස් ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක වැඩි කරගන්න. Fair and Lovely men anti-marks cream.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanaka. Let's start with your local stories. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe is critical of the choice made to build the MATTALA International Airport, saying that it has no demand, unlike the recently launched Jaffna International Airport. Responding to queries of the public, the Premier said that discussions are underway with the Indian authorities to make MATTALA a joint venture in a bid to develop it and to get it off the government's books.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe had an audience with the activists of Lions and Leo clubs in Colombo yesterday.
Why don't the MATTALA airport operate, and also why can't we visit there? And recently Jaffna airport has been opened. In future, will it be the same issue which has actually happened to MATTALA airport? Will we be getting job opportunities there?
Palali has been Jaffna International because there's a demand by people to use that airport. Also for tourism, it's a good point because then you need not return to Colombo. You can do a trip, go in there. What we started now is finally there will be daily flights from India. They are also willing to allow one of our airlines to come to India. We've asked for private people who are interested. So far no one has come in. The Jaffna flight will also come to Colombo. I think every day about 3,000 people to 4,000 people travel by bus only to Jaffna. Part of it, if 100 of them take the plane, then you got the demand. So there's a demand for Jaffna Colombo as well as Jaffna South India. And that will build up because once we extend the runway to take a 320, it means Middle East and Malaysia, Singapore also can reach. We are also looking at flights to Batiklo. Get more tourists into Pasikuda and Arugambe, and again Batiklo to Colombo. Secondly, we are doing it gradually. It's a prefab building which is the control tower. It is one prefab building which has now become the terminal. It's not very, very expensive. It's all prefab. The problem of MATTALA is that there is no demand for MATTALA. We have put a whole airport in the size of Katunayaka, and Katunayaka took 40 years to come to that point. We are talking with the Indian government to do a joint venture, and let's see how we can develop it. But Hambantota itself has to develop. We've taken over 10,000 acres for a special economic zone for which we will invite investors to come in. In the meantime, what we are trying to do is to get a commercial organization and give them concessional rates at least for a long term so that it will get off our books and we are not going to pay taxes to subsidize this.
Now, the presidential hopeful of the New Democratic Front, Minister Sajith Premadasa, launched his proposed Women's Convention today. Addressing the launching ceremony in Colombo, the minister said that all microloans obtained by women will be written off once he is elected to the president's office. Meanwhile, speaking at an election rally, Premadasa promised to increase the daily wage of estate workers to 1,500 rupees.
Presidential candidate of the New Democratic Front, Minister Sajith Premadasa, attended an election campaign rally in Kotmale yesterday.
ආදරණීය වතුකම් කරු ජනතාවට අදුම ගානේ දවසක දීවනාව 1500 කරන්නට අපි අප වෙනවා.
Meanwhile, the proposed Women Convention of the Presidential Hopeful was launched at the Sugatadasa Indoor Stadium today.
During the tenure of this government, we were able to ensure 25% women representation in local authorities. I hope to change our political path so the same result can be ensured within provincial councils and the parliament. Within the first week as the head of state, I will establish an independent women commission to strengthen women's rights. From the first moment of becoming president, I will write off all microloans obtained by women. A national women's bank will be established to grant loans on concessional basis. There was a time when permits to open wine stores were given from the back door of the president's residence. New permits will never be issued during my tenure. I will also ensure the closure of all wine stores near schools.
මොනම හේතුවකටවත් wine stores බලපත්‍ර අලුතෙන් කිසිම දවසක ලබා දෙන්නේ නැtei කියලා මම ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
Minister Sajid Premadasa later signed the Women's Convention.
அவர்களையும் மேடைக்கு அன்புடன் அழைக்கின்றோம்.
Now, presidential candidate of the New Democratic Front, Mr. Sajid Premadasa, says he will not hesitate to implement the death penalty on drug traffickers who engage in the illegal activity from inside the prison system. The presidential hopeful expressed these views at a conference held in Colombo today.
When you look at the existing situation, there is a huge issue that we have to solve. This issue is, since we have long-term prison sentences that are inflicted upon those who are involved in the drug business, I have observed that the business that these drug barons and drug lords, which they conducted while they were out, in fact expands once they enter prison. We have to be prudent and also surgical in enacting harsher punishments if we have the situation of an increase or an expansion of business. Once they enter the prison system, I actually have no hesitation in implementing the death penalty for the drug lords. I mean, not for the minnows, but for the major drug barons.
With Honorable Sajid becoming the president, it would be very easier for me to continue this struggle against the tobacco and other drugs. Most of the people, they become poor because of this menace. The tobacco cultivation, which we have promised that by 2020, we will do away with the plantation. Already about 30% of the plantation is been, that we have diverted to other crops. So the balance 70, even taking another 2-3 years more, and to continue and stop cultivation of tobacco, because already with the 90% taxes and all, with all the measures taken, the smoking has come down by 1 billion sticks a year.
One-man aerial vehicles, or drones as we know them, have become a feature in terrorist activities in recent times. One of the high-profile incidents of such nature is the attempt made on the life of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro involving explosive drones last year. Dangers posed by unmanned aerial vehicles was heavily felt in Sri Lanka as well just after the Easter attacks, and as a result, the general public was banned from using them. Addressing a panel discussion on violent extremism in South Asia yesterday, research assistant of the Institute of National Security Studies highlighted some of the threats UAV technology could bring to Sri Lanka if not mitigated early.
Inexperienced operators can very easily access and manipulate this technology for malevolent use. And as we see things like AI take off in this kind of technology, they'll be able to achieve a lot more autonomy, which means there will essentially be no need for a human to interact in that process of a violent extremist attack. As such, even though we see pretty rigorous reforms in place for Sri Lanka, especially in comparison to the world standards, there are gaps in the current framework that hold the potential to have serious consequences on national security and political economy. I think there's an urgent need across the globe to shift from these classifications that are generally weight-based on UAVs to capability-based. And even though Sri Lanka's standards do acknowledge UAV capabilities as a determining factor in the regulatory framework, there should be an active effort to move towards an increasingly technologically neutral regulation system that can maintain its relevance in spite of technological innovation. The present ban on UAVs also presents an opportune moment for the CAA to engage in diligent stakeholder consultations and create updated regulatory standards that could then be enforced once the ban has been lifted. There's obviously an explicit need for regulations that understand the end-to-end operation of UAVs in Sri Lanka, which is definitely missing in the landscape today. There also needs to be a regulatory mechanism that is then developed that streamlines the oversight of UAVs under a single authority and strengthens the capability of that respective authority to monitor UAV use in cases where operators haven't registered their aircraft or received the appropriate approvals.
Now, presidential candidate of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Gotabaya Rajapaksa is confident that he has the required policy plan for the revival of the country's economy. The former Defence Secretary's remarks came at a public rally in Hakmana yesterday.
Another campaign rally of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was held at the Mulatiyana public grounds in Hakmana last evening. A group of JVP activists in Mulatiyana area pledged support to the presidential candidate of the SLPP, former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
Sri Lankaවේ තේවලට ලෝක වෙළඳ පොලේ හොඳ මිලක් තිබුණා.
Ceylon tea had a good global market price. The price took a fall due to exporting substandard tea. The government should have intervened. When our government comes to power, we will intervene and take measures to tag a good price on Ceylon tea. When our government comes to power, we will intervene and take measures to tag a good price on Ceylon tea. We will safeguard the local farmer by putting an end to the re-exportation of crops like pepper and areca nuts. We have a clear plan to revive the country's economy, be it through national security or through the economy. It is only us who will be able to drive the country forward.
Meanwhile, another public rally organised by the SLPP was held in Tangol this morning. A group of UN peers of the South pledged their support to the SLPP presidential contender, Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
Projects initiated by the previous government came to a standstill for about 2.5 years after this government came to power. With the projects coming to an end, the economy collapsed. Due to their imprudent governance, all other sectors took a fall as well. Instead of developing the local farmer, they followed a policy which deserted the local farmer. We should develop agriculture by providing these farmers with concessions. I guarantee to lead the way in fulfilling my duty of building a safe, prosperous country.
Another campaign rally of the SLPP was conducted under the auspices of its presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa in Amelipitia today.
We don't intend to keep the farming community poor. We will take measures to increase their income by providing them with necessary technology and education. I will fulfill the duty I am handed to the fullest. Now, opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa harbours an unfavourable view on the set of proposals agreed upon recently by several northern Tamil political parties, insisting the contents of it will lead to the division of Sri Lanka. The 13-point proposal was agreed upon and are a set of demands to be traded in exchange for support in the looming presidential election. The opposition leader touched on the topic as he addressed several gatherings yesterday.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa attended a public gathering held at parliamentarian Chamal Rajapaksa's residence in Tissa Maharama yesterday.
Sajith Premadasa is found to be guilty in the probe launched by the Presidential Commission of Inquiry. Thanks to the President, this report is not made public. People like him don't have a proper vision. Members of the government themselves say that Premadasa has not even completed 8th grade at school. Even Ravi Karunanayaka says that Premadasa is not a suitable candidate to become the head of state. There is no point in talking about the Hambantota port, which has been sold off. It now belongs to foreigners and we need permission to enter its premises. I wonder if we'd need a passport after some time.
The opposition leader also expressed his views on proposals put forth by the Tamil National Alliance at a public gathering held in the area of Ridhyagama in Ambalantota.
I have not been given these proposals yet. The UNP, however, says that they will support the TNA, which means they have to agree to this set of proposals. These are proposals which will divide the country, but we will not allow the country to be divided, and we will not even touch those proposals. JVP parliamentarian MP Vijitha Herath accuses presidential candidate of the New Democratic Front, Minister Sajith Premadasa, of bribing the people, pointing to hundreds and thousands of Samurdhi appointments that are allegedly promised by the UNP. The JVP parliamentarian accused the presidential hopeful of misleading the people. Now, in the meantime, launching their economic policy, presidential candidate of the National People's Power, Anurakumara Dissanayake, said that he will not turn his back on loans, as that is the only way to come out of the current debt crisis.
The economic policy of the movement National People's Power was presented today, headed by its presidential candidate MP Anurakumara Dissanayake. It was launched at the Sri Lanka Foundation Institute this morning.
We don't say no to governmental loans. The only way to overcome this debt crisis is to obtain another loan. We need to finance an effective project by obtaining another loan and systematically settle the loan from the profits obtained from such a project. We can't do this within just 5 years. I think two economic policies are being discussed in this election contest. One is Beggar's economic policy, promising to provide milk, food for pregnant women and fertilizer to farmers free of charge. It is not an act of magic to build a country.
Meanwhile, during a media briefing held this morning at the headquarters of the JVP, MP Vijitha Herath stated that the government is issuing Samurdhi appointments, violating election laws.
Lately, they have given Samurdhi to 600,000 families, and 380,000 of such applications have reached the ministry. Minister Daya Gamage has advised the officials of the ministry to open each and every application, and they have paid 1 rupee to open one such letter. To computerize those details, they have paid 5 rupees per one letter. They have spent 5.4 million rupees for this purpose and have sent letters to all those applicants saying that they are eligible for Samurdhi, but it cannot be granted at this moment in time due to the presidential election, however, that they promise to give it as soon as the election is over. So they have prepared 380,000 such letters, and the officials of the Election Commission has taken those letters into their custody. But it was only a fraction of those letters which fell into the hands of the Election Commission. The rest of the letters are with the electorate organisers of the UNP. Now they are distributing those letters. This is also a serious violation of election laws, and it is also bribery. The Samurdhi Ministry has sent their WP-KR0824 car, WP-KJ7544 Jeep, WP-TD0824 Nissan Cab, WP-C809008 X-Trail Jeep, WP-GA6710 lorry for election duties. They're misusing state properties for the election campaigns. Now, Speaker KARU JAYASURIYA insists that the United Nations should not be accused of bias and unfair treatment. We'll have more on that after this break. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Speaker KARU JAYASURIYA insists that the perception of bias and unfair treatment meted out by the United Nations are misleading. Addressing the National Youth Model United Nations yesterday, the Speaker brushed off any suggestion of unfair treatment and interference on Sri Lanka by the global body.
The National Youth Model United Nations 2019 was held under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena and Speaker KARU JAYASURIYA yesterday.
UN is not a world government, and that all countries, including the Sri Lanka, that have obtained membership of the UN have done so voluntarily. The United Nations is not an external agency that forces us to do certain things or tells us what to do. Also, the UN cannot perform miracles because in whatever it does, it has to work with member states. Therefore, the idea that some in Sri Lanka have of the UN and propagate almost on a daily basis, including newspapers, implying interference and unfair treatment is terribly misleading. There is a tendency among some politicians that is amplified by the media to create an us versus them world. We must be intelligent enough not to fall prey to such attempts. Our country has missed so many opportunities and suffered much misery as a result of our inability to build an inclusive society that respects and celebrates the diversity of multi-ethnic, multilingual and multi-religious nation.
The issue of illicit drugs is a very serious problem in the country, and that is why I decided to implement the death penalty for drug traffickers. When I decided to exercise the power over 4 people, various political party leaders and others came forward. They then went to Supreme Court, which later ruled to postpone the decision on the death penalty. The court will deliberate on the matter next week, and I don't know what its decision would be. If they decide to postpone their decision or rule that the death penalty should be abolished, I won't be able to exercise that power during my tenure. But if the Supreme Court supports my decision, I will make sure to exercise death penalty before I leave office. Now, the Lanka delegation to the United Nations General Assembly had expressed concern to the United Nations Secretariat over the practices adopted by the Department of Peace Operations recently in relation to Sri Lanka, which was in violation of MOU with the sovereign country while challenging the decision of a head of state. The UN recently decided not to replace a percentage of Sri Lankan peacekeepers currently deployed as retaliation to Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva being made the chief of Sri Lanka Army. The global body questioned the president's decision to appoint Silva to the top military post, citing alleged war crimes allegations levelled against him. The permanent mission of Sri Lanka to the United Nations in New York said in a statement that Sri Lanka's delegate, Deputy High Commissioner in Canada, Sithara Khan, made the observation at the 5th Committee of the United Nations General Assembly on improving the financial situation of the United Nations recently. During the session, Sri Lanka had observed that the Secretariat had failed to formally reply the written communication addressed on the relevant aspects of the matter for over a month, adding that it was important to have formal communications in order to avert confusion and misunderstanding on information provided verbally. She also called on the UN Secretariat to ensure that such a misplaced process should not be allowed to be systematized in order to avoid politicization of the decision-making process and for professional ethics of the organization to be secured. Now, in more local news, State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardena points out that it is vital that maritime route of the Indian Ocean be sustainable and uninterrupted in order to ensure an unimpeded flow of world economy. The State Minister made the remark during inaugural session of the International Maritime Conference Goal Dialogue 2019, organised by Sri Lanka Navy together with the Ministry of Defence. Themed Refining Mindset to Address Transnational Maritime Threats, a review of the decade, the conference saw the participation of international scholars and experts in naval and maritime affairs representing 55 countries along with 12 international organizations and 3 defense industries.
The position of Sri Lanka in the Indian Ocean plays a vital role in the maritime route of the East and West. At present, 90% of world trade takes place through the sea. The sea lane of communications in the IOR is strategically very important to the entire world. Any disturbance or interruptions to unimpeded flow of this traffic would create a huge influence on the world economy. As a vast amount of energy-related products and finished products of goods of the world traverse in the Indian Ocean, the sustainable and uninterrupted flow of traffic in this route is essential for economic development. Therefore, the international community has a large concern for the region's security both at sea and land. Transnational threats are becoming one of the major security issues in the IOR. Different extremist religious groups and terrorists are using the maritime domain extensively for their activities. This has endangered the security of the major sea routes of the Indian Ocean. Further, policing the vast ocean creates a huge challenge, especially in dealing with the illegal movements of narcotics and migrants.
Transnational crimes such as human smuggling, piracy, drug trafficking, maritime terrorism, IUU fishing and maritime pollution have room to take place because of the lack of adequate domination and surveillance at sea. The increasing number of seagoing vessels and their growing diversity make the identification of potential threats very difficult. Threats also exist in sea lanes of communication, which in turn affect the international trade and energy security. Therefore, countries must get together to find solutions beyond the legal intervention in the high seas, despite of the existence of various conventions, treaties or agreements, whereas token joint naval exercises are no longer adequate.
Now, ICRA Lanka Limited, a subsidiary of ICRA Limited, a group company of Moody's Investors Service, yesterday reaffirmed the issuer rating of Bank of Ceylon at SL-AAA and has revised the outlook on the rating to negative from stable. It said the revision in outlook factors in BOC's moderate capitalization levels with steady decline in capital buffers and weakening asset quality impacted its earning profile. The bank reported a core capital ratio of 10.73% and a total capital adequacy ratio of 15.48% in June as compared to the regulatory requirement of 10% and 14% respectively. However, ICRA Lanka noted the gradual decline in the bank's capital buffers due to moderation in internal generation, mainly because of weak asset quality. This, with less than 1% buffer over the regulatory capital requirements, the ability of the bank to absorb any further asset quality shocks remains low. ICRA Lanka, however, expects timely and adequate equity infusion by the government to maintain the capitalization profile. The rating continues to factor in 100% government ownership, which provides a strong likelihood of sovereign support and BOC's leading position in the Sri Lankan banking industry. Now, taking a look at the markets, Sri Lankan shares closed flat today as gains in consumer staples were offset by losses in telecommunications shares. The all-share price index closed 0.01% higher at 5,863.99. Foreign investors bought riskier assets for the second time in 14 sessions by purchasing a net 216.2 million rupees worth of shares. Now, here's a brief report on today's market performance.
In the bond market, the secondary market yield curve remained almost unchanged, while the overall market witnessed moderate volumes. Notably, on the back of buying interest, the one-year T-bill traded 831 to 825 levels with considerable volume. In the equity market, bourse continued the positive momentum for the third straight session on the price gains made in distilleries and Ceylon tea. Turnover recorded a near 1.5-month high, while 15% of turnover was acquired from parcel trades. Foreigners perceived to be net buyers for the second consecutive day with high foreign involvement.
Now, taking a look at the currency market, the Sri Lankan rupee ended 0.14% firmer at 181 rupees and 72.80 cents against the US dollar, compared with Friday's close of 181 rupees and 95 cents to 182 rupees and 10 cents. Now, here's a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies around the world. We take a look at what's happening around the world after this short break. Don't go away. Now, ex-international cricketers Mike Hussey and Ryan Harris are set to join Australia's backroom staff for the 2020 International Series against Sri Lanka and Pakistan. Former middle-order batsman Hussey said that he was also being looked at for a role in the T20 World Cup in Australia next year. 44-year-old former Test batsman Hussey emphasised the need to get strategies in place and develop a style of play to get the team closer to winning the 2020 World Cup. Australian coach Justin Langer has also made former Test speedster Ryan Harris bowling coach for the series. Australia will play back-to-back 3 games T20 series against Sri Lanka and then Pakistan starting next Sunday in Adelaide to kick off their summer season. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.